What's going on, Tamers? East here, and I don't know about you, but with EX10 Sinister Order's release, there are so many more new fun toys to play with in the Digimon card game. You've got decks like Myotismon, you've got Bagara Army, Lilithmon, Blackwargreymon, Bagara Army, Belphemon, Bagara Army. It's just so hard to choose just one. Which one did I choose? They'll figure it out, right? But with all these new toys comes a whole bunch of new situations in the game to explore, and a lot have honestly left me already scratching my head about how does this actually work, or how do we actually resolve the effects? And that's what this video here is for. I want to go over some of the new cards, their effects, and some situations you might find yourself in order to help you look like a level 0 judge in front of your friends. They'll be all like, he reads? But more importantly, to help you become a better Digimon player in the process. Whether you're a seasoned Digimon veteran or a new player just hopping into the game, I hope that you'll learn something in today's video. So with that, let's dive in. So the question is, which card do we actually start with? There's actually a lot of really interesting cards in this set, so it's kind of tough to choose. But how about this? I'm just going to pick a card at random and we'll just go from there. How about that? Oh look, it's Darknessbagramon. I guess we'll start there. So let's first take a look at his effect. On play or on Digivolve, you can choose one card in your opponent's hand without looking, and then you can place it under one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers at their bottom Digivolution card. There's more, but for this example, we're just going to stop there because this is the important part. So the question here is a pretty broad one, and that is exactly how does this effect work? I think it seems pretty simple on paper, but like who gets to place the card? Where does it get placed? Who gets to choose that? And all other manner of things about just picking this card from your opponent's hand without looking. But whether you're using this effect or you're fighting against it, there's some nuance here that we need to take a look at. So let's take a look at exactly how the effect itself works. The player playing Darknessbagramon basically chooses a card in your hand and they decide where to put it under any of your Digimon or Tamers like we mentioned before. There are a couple of small caveats here. The Digimon who are unaffected by effects cannot have a card placed underneath them as a source. So things like a Blackwargreymon ACE actually would not be able to have a card placed underneath it. So in the case your opponent only has a Digimon on board and that Digimon is unaffected by effects, you can choose a card but then nothing happens and it just goes back to your opponent's hand. So then you're probably thinking, well, at least I got a little bit of value out of the effect because I could see one of the cards that they have in their hand, right? Wrong. The player using Darknessbagramon's effect cannot actually look at a card until it's placed underneath a Digimon or a Tamer as a source. This means that when you're actually choosing where to put the card, you don't know what it is yet. Once they decide, then you can put it face up and show your opponent what it is or reveal it to them. And because of this, it can make for some really funny situations. For example, putting an X antibody underneath one of your opponent's Digimon is not a good look, honestly. There's the risk that sometimes you might actually be helping your opponent out in this case. But this can also swing the other way as well. I've been playing a lot of Bagara Army since the set's released, and it's so hilarious when you put an Ace card underneath one of their Digimon. Putting an Omnimon Ace underneath an Agumon really does put a smile on my face. I think the big thing to remember here is that if you're playing against someone who's using Bagara Army and they play down the Darknessbagramon, you don't have to show them the card until they actually tell you where to put it. The next card we're going to talk about is going to be Blackwargreymon ACE. Again, one of my other favorite cards from this set. Blackwargreymon likes to punch down by becoming a 15k invincible to your opponent's effects Digimon whenever an opponent tries to get stronger than him. But what happens when he attacks and deletes a Digimon with 13,000 DP with an on-deletion effect? It's a little fringe, but follow me with this one. Let's imagine your opponent has a BT5 or BT6 Omnimon's worth defeat on the field, 13k, and has an on-deletion effect that deletes one Digimon. You might be wondering, well, what happens if your Blackwargreymon attacks the Omnimon's worth defeat and then deletes it? I'll give you a moment to think it through. Press pause if you need to in the video, think about it for a second, and then come back. Got your answer? Alright, well, let's figure this out. The answer here is, unfortunately, your Blackwargreymon ACE is going to bite the dust. Remember that on-deletion effects only activate once they're in the trash. I believe we talked about this in a previous video talking about Velgramon and the Velgramon loop deck as well. And so, with the Omnimon's worth defeat in the trash at this point, there's nothing on board that's 13k or higher, and so your Blackwargreymon immediately loses invincibility. And then once the Omnimon's deletion effect activates from the trash, your Blackwargreymon no longer has protection. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, let's take a look at another funny scenario that actually might have you scratching your head. As a bonus, let's talk a little bit about what happens when you're playing a mirror, where your opponent has a Blackwargreymon ACE on the board and you have a Blackwargreymon ACE on the board. But let's also imagine that your opponent has, in addition, a BT9 Gaiomon who has 13,000 DP on their side of the board as well. In this situation, your Blackwargreymon ACE sees the Gaiomon, who is 13k, and then he himself buffs himself to 15k and becomes invincible to effects. And then following that, your opponent's Blackwargreymon sees your Blackwargreymon at 15k and says, well, I'm going to become a 15k DP Digimon who's also invisible to effects as well. So now I've set the stage. Both you and your opponent have a Blackwargreymon ACE on the board, 15k, and both are invincible to opponent's effects. Your opponent also has a 13k Gaiomon on the board. Let's imagine this Gaiomon goes for a security check, and the first check is the same Gaiomon. It's 13k DP, and as a result of the security battle, that Gaiomon dies. What happens to the Blackwargreymon's DP buff and their invincibility to opponent's effects? Think about it for a second. Do they both go down to 12k again and become affected by effects again? The answer here is actually no. They both keep seeing each other at 15k DP and just, they never lose the effect. Really looking forward to how they program that one in Digimon Elysian. Oh boy. So spoilers for next week's meta report. Magnetic Dramon is probably one of the hottest decks in Japan right now, and also one of the most powerful decks released in EX10. And while the level 7 Magnetic Dramon is probably the star of the show right now, we're actually going to take a look at the supporting cast in the level 5 Praganomon. He has a hand effect that lots of the Digimon Liberator protagonist lines are getting access to, and that if you have a closed Tamer in play, you can evolve from a level 3 Tsunorizamon into the level 5 directly by placing level 4 from your trash in its sources. The question here is, if you use his effect to evolve over the BT21 Tsunorizamon, whose your turn effect says you can evolve into a rock or mineral trait at cost -1, can you actually get the reduction and evolve for only 2 cost? I know, I'm throwing softballs at you folks out there. The answer here is actually yes. You can get a 2-cost Digivolution. Because the Your Turn effect doesn't actually cause or trigger evolution, it's kind of just like a passive lingering effect waiting for an evolution to happen, and then once it sees one, it procs. But be careful, because not all reduction is created equally. There are other cards like the Black Staple Defense Training, which lets you evolve at cost -2, but you can't actually use this in combination with the Praganomon hand effect. Take a look at the Defense Training card text and tell me if you can figure out why. The answer here is you actually cannot, and that's because Defense Training is a card that actually triggers or causes evolution to happen. And because the Praganomon's effect is also a card that causes evolution to happen, you can't combine these into one. When in doubt, you can only use one effect that causes evolution to happen, and then you can use other effects like the Tsunorizamon to reduce those. In this video, I'm just giving you some of the overview of how these evolution effects work, but there's definitely a much more in-depth graphic that a guy by the name, I think, of Definitely Jeff has created. Do me a favor, Sage, and put that up on the screen somewhere. Definitely Jeff, thank you so much for creating these. He's actually got a ton of these, and if I can, I'll link to them in the description below. It's not just for like this effect itself, but there's a lot of other like really easy to understand graphics that go over lots of maybe confusing effects in the game or like game rules. That being said, thanks for all the hard work in putting these together, Jeff. Much appreciated. The new Myotismon cards have been highly talked about even before this set's released, thanks to some scary loop gameplay discovered by the Chinese players. I originally decided not to cover this because I thought it was kind of fringe and maybe a little bit hard to pull off, but if you folks really want to see it, let me know in the comments below and maybe we'll spin up a video for that. Anyways, I digress. Let's get back to basics with some of these new Myotismon effects and a couple situations that you might be wondering about. So the new Myotismon from EX10 says that when you play him, by deleting one of your Digimon with Myotismon in its text, reduce his play cost by 4. The question here is actually a pretty broad one, and that is, whenever a card says blank in text, what exactly does that mean? Does it only include the card's effect text? What if the name is in like a rule box or like an evolution box? What if it's in inheritance or sources? Which ones count and which ones don't? I'm not going to keep you in suspense. The answer here is actually kind of a red herring. It's actually pretty straightforward. If any of those places, card text, card's name, rule boxes, inheritance effects, etc., all count towards being considered X in text. The only thing it doesn't include are things like the artist's name on the card, or like the thing that says play cost over on the top left which shows the actual play cost of the Digimon, or like the evolve cost. I doubt that a card would say evolve in text or play cost in text, but yeah, those don't count. All the metatextual stuff, essentially. When I say inherited effects, though, keep in mind this doesn't include other cards underneath your Digimon stack that have the card's name in it, right? For example, if you had a BT8 Myotismon and you evolved that into a Metal Garurumon, the Metal Garurumon does not technically have Myotismon in card text because of the Myotismon in Inheritance's effect. It has to be on the stack's topmost card itself. This next situation still involves our favorite undead Sommelier. Is that really how you say it? It sounds wrong when I say it. Sommelier. I don't know, it doesn't sound right. Going back to his original card text, he says that you can play him by deleting one of your other Digimon with Myotismon in their text at cost -4. Let's imagine that you have an EX10 Arukenimon, a card with a big name that I can pronounce, in play, and you also have an EX10 Yugioh in the trash. Arukenimon has an effect that says on deletion, you can play a Tamer with Myotismon in its text from your trash. But the question here is, if you delete the Arukenimon in order to play the Myotismon, which effect happens first? And the order here kind of matters because the Yugioh has an effect on play that says you can give one of your Myotismon in name cards Rush. So going back to the original question, which one do you get first? The Myotismon's on play or the Arukenimons on deletion? The answer here is that Digimon is a kind game and you can actually choose. When you delete the Arukenimon to play down the Myotismon, both the on-play effect and the on-deletion effect trigger at the same time. And for folks who have been playing the Digimon card game for a bit or seen some of our previous videos, you know that whenever two effects trigger at the same time, the player can choose how to resolve them. Keep in mind that if the effects trigger at the same time, if one effect is yours and one is your opponent's, the player with turn priority is actually going to get to activate their effects first. So basically whoever's turn it is. So now I'm going to leave the rest of the answer to you. When taking a look at the Yugioh, the Arcanimon, and the Myotismon, in which order should you actually resolve these effects? Also, which way should you not resolve them? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, so now we're finally at our last card, and look, I've been lobbing a couple of the easy ones over throughout the video because this last one is a doozy. Let's take a look at the new EX10 Lilithmon. If you think this whole video is a little bit Bogota Army biased, I don't know where you got that from, by the way. That's crazy. But for real though, deck's interesting, you should give it a shot. So the scenario we're going to talk about is Lilithmon's effect that gives your opponent's Digimon or Tamer the effect to delete one of their Digimon at the end of the turn. So let's set the stage really quickly. Let's imagine that you have an EX10 Bagramon, 13k DP on the board. Your opponent has a Blackwargreymon ACE, who's 15k DP and immune to your opponent's effects. And you decide to play down the Lilithmon. So the question is, what happens when you use the Lilithmon's on play to give the Blackwargreymon the effect at end of turn to delete their Digimon? Because technically, the end of turn effect is now his effect, right? And he's only immune to opponent's Digimon's effects. Does Lilithmon allow you to bypass effect immunity? Really ponder this one, press pause and come back when you're ready. Alright, so you got it? Alright, well, the answer here is a little confusingly no. You cannot use Lilithmon's effect on the Blackwargreymon to delete a Digimon and then delete him. And I know this is a little confusing, so let's break it down. We've talked about the concept of giving effects before in some of our videos when we talked about things like Magnamon X Antibody in the past. And I want to bring him back for an example with EX5 Edamon to kind of show you how and why this works. Or doesn't work, rather. The EX5's Edamon can give an opponent's Digimon the start of main phase effect they must attack. So let's look at how he interacts with the Magnamon X Antibody using the concept of stickers. I think we've used this example in previous videos before, so longtime watchers may remember some of this. Let's imagine that Edamon puts a sticker on Magnamon X Antibody that says at the start of your turn, you have to attack. And even though Magnamon X Antibody is immune to effects, that doesn't mean you're not allowed to target it. So again, Edamon gives Magnamon X Antibody the sticker with the effect on it that says you have to attack at the start of your main phase, even though at that time when he's given the sticker, Magnamon X Antibody is immune to effects. He can still be targeted, but he's not affected by the effects. What really matters here is the timing at which the sticker activates, or triggers in this case. If the sticker's effect activates at a time when Magnamon X has immunity to opponent's effects, he simply ignores what's written on the sticker from his opponent. The effect written on the sticker is technically his own, but the sticker it's written on belongs to an opponent's Digimon, aka the Edamon. To put it another way, what's written on the sticker is technically Magnamon X Antibody's effect. But while he has effect immunity, he can't read the sticker, so he totally ignores it. I guess you could say that illiteracy truly is power. Conversely, if the sticker activates when he doesn't have immunity, he is actually beholden to the effect written on the sticker and actually has to attack. Okay, so now that we've got that down, let's return to our original Lilithmon example. Sage, you do me a favor, set the stage again. Sorry, we gotta pull everything back. We have a Bagramon in play who makes Blackwargreymon ACE invincible to opponent's Digimon's effects. We use Lilithmon to give him end of turn delete one Digimon. If the Bagramon is still there by the end of their turn, thus giving Blackwargreymon effect immunity, he isn't deleted. However, if you found some way to delete your own Bagramon, removing the 13k DP Digimon from the board, the immunity will go away and Blackwargreymon will be deleted. So we could take out the Blackwargreymon ACE, but unfortunately at the expense of our own Bagramon. And honestly, who wants to do that? He's such a cute little fellow. So then follow-up question is, outside of taking out our own Bagramon, is there something else that we could have done? If we go back and read the whole Lilithmon effect again, it actually mentions that you can give the end of turn effect to Digimon or Tamers. And so if your opponent just so happens to have a TIE Tamer in play alongside their Blackwargreymon ACE, well now, we've got something interesting on our hands. Let's imagine we give the TIE Tamer the effect to delete one of your Digimon at the end of the turn, and we keep our Bagramon in play. Will this give us that delicious ACE overflow from Blackwargreymon by deleting him? Or is he still immune to effects? Got your answer? Alright, well let's compare. The answer is actually yes, you can delete the Blackwargreymon. Why is that? Well, we put the effect sticker on Tai, who at no point is immune to opponent's Digimon's effects. And so the end of turn comes, the sticker activates, and the player's own effect from their Tai activates and says delete a Digimon. Blackwargreymon effect immunity is only from opponent's effects, but this is the player's own Tai's effect, so goodbye, Blackwargreymon. Pretty cool, right? Look, I know the ending there is a little bit complicated, but I think using the sticker analogy really does help. But honestly, from all the cards that we covered in this video, I hope that you learned something new or something that might help you in deck building or whenever you come up against situations in your own games to kind of understand how effects actually work. Feel free to share this video with other folks who are either just hopping into the Digimon card game or folks who are just getting their hands and looking at some of the EX10 cards from the Sinister Order set. Also, I want to take a moment and give a big thank you and a big shout out to all the folks in the Digimon TCG 2020 rules questions server for answering all of my questions and going through all of my inane scenarios to help me really submit my understanding here. That includes the likes of Rubble Doe, Nightclaw, Emiya, Jzaku, and Swamp. Thank you guys so much for helping me and putting it with all my crazy ass questions. And with that, we can pretty much wrap this one up. I'm sure that you've probably come across some other really cool card effects or situations that are maybe a little bit unintuitive or really interesting. If you have, put them in the comments below. I'd definitely love to learn more and read down there. Anyways, folks, I'm gonna get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Seiji's gonna kill me. It's probably gonna be my last video. You'll never see me again.